This is going to be decidedly more polemical, fair warning, because this is not speculation. This is all based on fact, and it's really devastating and really alarming. But again, maybe we need to be fair. Again, just because a person so far has done really not good work doesn't mean in the future she can't do great work. So we're going to concentrate on Wandavision and the showrunner, Jac, and her background, and it's fairly alarming when we go through it because it's like, wow, this is who they're giving a whole show to. This is somebody who's being trusted with the script for major characters, and so far it's not good at all. What's the story? Well, essentially, Jac rather absentmindedly just confessed that they don't know who Mephisto is, which, if you know WandaVision, doesn't make sense, as we're going to see explained, because no, you have to know who Mephisto is because you're using characters who wouldn't exist if you didn't have Mephisto. Apparently, they just used characters because they wanted them, and they didn't even care about the founding mythology. Now, I'm one of those that's open-minded about this. If, again, we can't avoid language. If the normies want to do Marvel comic book movies, if the normies want to pretend that they care about Marvel comics or even care about comic book culture, I have no issue with that. I mean, it is what it is. Hollywood only really cares about these things primarily for money, and the MCU has always been primarily a profit-driven thing. I have no issue with that. That's fine. I'm not naive about those things. Nevertheless, I did hope at least some parts of the MCU were going to be at least somewhat faithful to the comics, and little did I know that almost nothing in the MCU was going to be faithful, and that's fine. I don't think those are very good films. I don't know if they'd be better films if they were faithful, but this is a very different story from being actively unfaithful and or even really hostile to the comics. I'm like, wow, that's quite a different stance, and I'm willing to see a lot of the flaws and problems of any comic book or any comic book series, but I also try to see the power and potential of it, and we're going to see that that's not Jac's attitude. In fact, Jac's attitude is very hostile.
And had an interview with Mashable, and she says it reveals why Mephisto was never in the mix. Those red herrings were completely unintentional, as Schaeffer says she had never heard of him before the press rolled out. There was never any conscious intention on my part to create any Mephisto red herrings because I didn't know who Mephisto was until I started doing press. Jesus Christ. So what? That's this year, as they mentioned. So they start doing press this year, and the actual person that is, what is she, the showrunner? Jac Schaeffer says that she had no idea who Mephisto was. Now, look, I'm not saying that every comic book nerd knows everything about everything when it comes to it. I have, yes, it's like an encyclopedia up here. But I'm not going to be like foolish enough to believe that I know every single thing. There's a lot of things that I even have to refresh my memory on. But I know a lot. This right here is inexcusable because at minimum, if you're writing this character in Scarlet Witch, even using these certain people, right, that you're using, we'll get into that here in a little bit. This is an inexcusable thing that you should have at least bothered to research. But all it does is confirm, what have I been saying? Marvel and DC is in the business of hiring people that have no connection to this material. It is popping right now. Comic book film is popping right now. Comic book TV is popping right now. So a lot of folks are just in the industry and they want to advance their careers, or in some cases, if not most, advance their social political views. Okay? So she never knew who Mephisto was. I'm going to tell you why that's inexcusable here in a minute. But I did a video talking about a Black Widow screenwriter who mentioned back 2 years ago that she didn't care about comic canon, which again reaffirms everything it is that I've been saying about these people. They have no connection to this. And it's not just writers. It's people that actually work for Marvel and in charge of like actually hiring or creative directions and stuff like that. They have no connection to this material. None. It's just a brand, and a lot of some aspects of stories and powers are written for them. Aside from that, they know nothing. It's just advancing their careers, a cash grab for them.
All right, so we've heard the polemical side of it, that the MCU is going off the deep end again because they've hired somebody who actually boasts, not only do I not know comics, I don't even know how to read a comic book. They can't even know the language of the comic book because you don't call it a cell, you call it a panel. So they don't even know how to read a comic book panel. And this is the person that they gave an entire series to. And not just a small series, but one of the lead-in MCU shows after Endgame. So let me give my own cards on the table with Vision and Scarlet Witch. I really, really love Vision. I think he's one of my favorite characters of all the characters in the Marvel Universe. He's one of the most fascinating and interesting characters. And he is insanely powerful. There's a what if issue where he single-handedly takes over the whole world, and you can see why, because he's that powerful. So he's a very fascinating figure. He did not play a big role in the Infinity Gauntlet or Infinity War, but I still think he played a little interesting critical cameo. And in fact, his little parts are actually very vital to the story, and you learn a lot from him. So I've always loved Vision, and I do not like the way that Paul Bettany is playing him. I don't recognize this as Vision. I don't like this Vision. I don't like it at all. I don't like this version of Scarlet Witch. I don't actively like anything they've done with Scarlet Witch or Vision. Nothing. And I actually like Ultron a lot, but I don't like the Vision they used. I don't like him in Infinity War or Endgame. I really have zero tolerance for this thing. But even trying to be fair-minded about it, the Wandavision was just a chore. It just doesn't do anything really exciting or interesting. And when they used the original costumes, it just felt like they were more insulting the fans. Elizabeth is fine. She's very sexy. She looks good on camera. She's not a bad actress, but really, aside from just looking good in a tight outfit, I don't see what she's bringing to the table. And Paul Bettany is fine as an actor, but there's nothing of vision in what he's doing. And I can kind of see why, because if the showrunner basically doesn't even know the basics of the Marvel Universe, I don't expect her to get vision right. So it just seems that they're taking the characters and they're playing with them in a story they think is interesting. And it has caught part of the fandom. They really, really dug WandaVision, and they're welcome to it, because I don't like it. I don't want it. I don't see anything at all fascinating or interesting. And even in terms of the kind of stories they are trying to tap into, because Scarlet Witch and Vision did have a relationship in the comics, but I found that really interesting and tragic. Just the way Vision basically was destroyed and had to reconstruct himself, and he became kind of like this very cold character, was very fascinating to go through. But they're not doing that. They're just doing a very, very shallow version of the character. And you can kind of see why, because as he points out, this is not a new thing. Because she doesn't care about the canon going way, way back. She announced it very publicly with Black Widow, saying, yeah, I don't really care about the comics if they're going to be too discriminatory. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? And her other big writing credit is Captain Marvel. And this is the sum of what we're getting. Okay, if she's that bad, why is she getting this? And the answer is simple. Captain Marvel made money. Did Captain Marvel deserve to make money? Quality-wise, no. I think it was barely okay. And that's fine. Okay movies are okay. Okay movies are okay. I want to say that very clearly. But it didn't deserve the box office it got. And the problem is, that's all that Marvel and Kevin Feige cares about is money. So they're looking at the numbers and they're like, everybody loves Captain Marvel. Well, I have no issue with Brie Larson. I appreciate what they were trying to do. I can see where she's coming from, but it's not a good story. It was not well done. It was not well directed. It's just an okay project. Hey, but it made money. And who was behind it? Oh, she was. Okay, let's give her something. And that's now going to be the logic of the MCU. If it makes money, it doesn't matter if it's stupid. It doesn't matter if it's not in the canon. It doesn't matter if it's against comic books. It doesn't matter if it's made by a complete illiterate to comic book culture. It made money, and that's all we care about. And they want to do their own stories. And who cares about Stan Lee or Jack Kirby? Who cares about Spider-Man's real origins? Who cares about the Avengers? Let's just make the money. And it's like, okay, fine. That's your attitude. I have no issue with that. But I don't see how I can be much of an active supporter or a fan of something that's resoundingly hostile to things I like. They want to do their own thing. Fine, that's totally legitimate. I even like Ultron, even though that's not classical Ultron. So I'm open-minded about these things, but this is really driving it to the absolute edge. Like, really? You don't even know how to read a comic book, and you're already dismissing most of the canon as discriminatory? And she's saying she's a Quentin Tarantino fan, and does she not know that Quentin Tarantino is a big comic book guy? Does she not even recognize the references in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he literally shoots a comic book? You can literally see it in the frame. A character likes comic books. I'm like, the insanity of this is like, it's ridiculous. Now, I don't mind if Marvel is doing that, but I would hope at least part of the universe should be open to people who really do like the comic books and is open to that part of it. And the only one I can see there is James Gunn. That seems to be the only one on the roster who actually knows and actively likes the comic books. That's about it. And I like James, but he's just one person. I can't expect him to carry the whole brunt of the Marvel Universe, and he's already going to leave. So this is kind of a very depressing report about what they're going to do forward. If Jack is any indication, it's going to be a really, really sharp decline, and it's going to be really, really fast. And at this point, I just don't care anymore because really, if the comic book characters are going to be so divorced from what they are in these film versions, like I'll watch them and I'll report on them, but I really do not have much love going forward with what the MCU is kind of reconstructing itself as, which is a really, really bizarre thing, totally separate from the comic books. And so far, the stories have not been very impressive, so I'm not very hopeful. But this has been the more polemical side, so hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there's going to be some good stuff I can enjoy at the movie level. But if somebody like her is any indication, yeah, we're not even going to get that with Black Widow, so that's kind of disappointing. All right, this has been the MCU in Decline polemical version. Thanks for listening.